Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here to take a first look at something that a lot of photographers would like to see under their Christmas tree this year, and that is Canon's new 85mm f1.4L IS USM medium telephoto lens. I was thinking as I began to take a look at this new lens that, you know what, it has been actually 2 full years since I have reviewed a Canon L series prime. And that's because there's been kind of a dearth of releases during that time. And I noted thinking back that during that same period of time, I have reviewed Tamron launched, and I've reviewed 3 of their new SP or special performance prime lenses that are kind of their premium lenses, along with 3 G2 Generation 2 zooms that are professional grade zooms. And of course, the ever prolific Sigma. I've reviewed 4 Art Series primes during that time, along with 3 Art Series zooms, not to mention new lenses from Zeiss, and Samyang Rokinon launched a premium series. So since the release of the Canon 35mm f1.4L Mark II, there are a lot of new premium lenses that have come to market, and most of them are not from the first parties. In fact, over that 2-year period, I've actually only reviewed 2 other L series or new L series lenses during that time, and that is the 16-35L Mark III and then the new 24-105 f4 LIS Mark II. And so it's great to have a new premium prime lens from Tamron here. And so there's a lot of pressure on this lens to perform. There are some great 85mm options now from Zeiss and from the Sigma Art, and even the Tamron 85 f1.8 VC lens is also a very good prime lens in this focal length. And so this lens, fortunately, out of the box seems to be a very promising one. Today we're going to jump in and we're going to take a closer look at the build quality and the design, some of the basic specifications, and give you a closer look at this lens, as well as a few of the images that I've taken thus far. So let's jump in, let's take a look. So today we're taking a look at the new 85mm f1.4L IS USM, and this is the largest maximum aperture that Canon has ever put an image stabilizer on, and at the 85mm focal length, it is the largest maximum aperture stabilized prime lens. And so as you can see, Canon says that the design language most resembles the new-ish now 35mm f1.4L Mark II, and you can see that that's certainly the case. The 35 f1.4L Mark II maybe feels a hair denser because it's as you can see, it's a physically smaller lens, smaller in diameter, but the heft is, somewhat similar, not quite as heavy, but it just has a feeling of density. But that's true also of the 85mm f1.4L IS. It certainly has a feeling of heft, and it feels well made, and I suspect that it is, and so there are some engineered plastics as a part of the build, but I would suspect it's mostly metal construction. And in fact, Lens Rentals, when they tore apart the 35L Mark II, they said is one of the best constructed lenses that they had seen. I doubt that things are really all that different here on this particular lens. Now, a few things to observe on the physical sides here is that, first of all, as is now the case with all Canon's hoods, there is a locking mechanism there in place. I'm divided on whether I feel like this is necessary, but anyway, that's what they do. Unlike a lot of Canon's L series lens hoods, however, which are typically a flocked type interior like this is a ribbed hood, and frankly, it doesn't feel all that premium. It's a pretty lightweight piece of plastic here. And beyond that, there is some question about whether or not this is nearly enough depth to actually shield and shade all that much a 85mm lens like this. And so, in fact, for example, Tamron, while the lens itself here is physically shorter by a fair bit, as you can see there, this is their 85mm f1.8. You can see it's a considerably smaller lens, but if we compare the lens hoods from the two lenses, you can see that the Tamron lens hood is significantly larger. So Anyway, I have noted already that one of my photographer friends that I'm connected with, that they already, without shooting in theirs in a bit of light rain, that they found that it wasn't nearly enough protection to keep water off of the front element. And so anyway, that's something that is certainly a part of the design. And you know, there's going to be some question whether or not that's enough lens hood for this kind of lens. Looking at the overall dimensions of the lens itself here, this obviously is physically larger than the Tamron 85, but the Tamron has a maximum aperture of f1.8. I use it as a comparison more because it is one of the very few other 85mm focal length prime lenses that has an image stabilizer, and so I will use it as a comparison point on some of that, because for those of you that maybe use a high resolution body, a 5DS, 5DSR, you have found that not having image stabilizers makes a pretty huge difference in your apparent resolution that you can get out of a lens. So there's a reason why Canon put an image stabilizer in this where they hadn't previously. So this lens is physically larger than the 85mm f1.2L Mark II, which is 3.3 inches or 83.8 centimeters. This new lens is significantly longer. It's 4.15 inches or 105.4 millimeters. And so just to give you a sense of, you know, comparison here, the Tamron lens is just a little bit longer than what the 85L 1.2L, I should say, Mark II is. And so that gives you an idea that this lens is physically definitely a bit longer. And this lens is, however, the difference is that it's a little bit narrower in circumference, or diameter, I should say, than the 85 1.2L, which is 3.6 inches or 91.4 inches in diameter. This new lens is 3.49 inches or 88.6 millimeters in diameter. Now, as far as the weight goes, this is actually a lighter lens by a little bit than the 85 1.2L, which is 1,025 grams or little over 36 ounces. This new lens is right under 33.5 ounces or 950 grams. The Tamron, of course, is lighter, less glass, and so it's 700 grams or basically 1.5 pounds, 24.5 ounces. Of course, the heavyweight in this category now is the Sigma 85 f1.4 Art lens, which is nearly 5 inches long, and so considerably longer. It is 126.2 millimeters compared to 105.4 millimeters. So it's longer. It is bigger around. It's 3.73 inches or 94.7 millimeters, and so it's bigger around. And of course, it has an 86 millimeter front filter thread. The Canon has a very common 77 millimeter compared to the f1.2L has a 72 millimeter. I actually prefer the 77 millimeter because it's shared with more lenses in my experience myself. The Tamron also has an extremely common 67 millimeter front filter, which I'm also happy with because that's an extremely common shared with a lot of lenses. So as you can see, this lens, it's large and it is heavy-ish, but there are certainly competitors that are heavier, including ones from Canon and certainly the Sigma, and then the Zeiss 85mm options are going to be heavier than this. But, of course, to be fair, when it comes to the Zeiss's, for example, there is more metal in the construction. And really, even with this Tamron, it's very clear that the Tamron employs, an actual metal shell here without the, the plastics over the top of it. And so, as far as the build goes, the Tamron looks and feels just as well built. I suspect probably the Canon is a bit better. It's certainly a premium lens. Now, in terms of the breakdown of price, the Canon 1.4L IS, it slots in a little bit under what the 1.2L Mark II has been, which is about $1,850. This new lens is going to retail about $1,600 in the US market. The Sigma came to market at $11.99. It's now, the price has dropped a bit to $10.99 at the moment. The Tamron is, of these kind of more premium options, it is the cheapest at $749. Now to break down a few of the other specs, minimum focus distance on this new lens is around 85 centimeters. That's 2.79 feet, giving you a very average 0.12 times magnification. And that does manage to top by a little bit, by 1 point, the 85 f1.2L Mark II. The Tamron is the best in the class at 0.14 times, and if you're interested, the Sigma is actually the same as this Canon lens here. This is a more complex optical formula compared to the 1.2L Mark II, which was 8 elements in 7 groups. It's older optical design, less complex. This new one is 14 elements in 10 groups, which is a little more complex than the Sigma, or a little less, I should say, complex than the Sigma, which is also 14 elements, but in 12 groups. The Tamron is 13 elements in 9 groups. All of the modern ones go to which is pretty much the standard, the 9 rounded aperture blades. And that's the case here as well. This image stabilizer, which I will be testing myself, it's rated for around 4 stops, which is standard for what most modern Canon stabilizers are, and so certainly interesting there. I'll give you a quick look just with it mounted on a camera here. So this is mounted on a 5D Mark IV, and as you can see, it it's a nice fit here in terms of the weight. It balances fine. It's not front heavy. You can definitely tell a difference in the weight and also because of the more compact nature of this lens compared to the Sigma Art, which is considerably longer, and as a result, it also has it flares out bigger towards the front, and so it's a little bit more front heavy than what this lens is. And of course, it's also the Sigma is almost 200 grams heavier, and so that certainly makes a difference as well. One thing that I was delighted with, and which is always it's great with a new Canon first party lens in the L series, is that I put the lens on the camera and I pretty much had accurate autofocus right out of the box. And I actually still haven't done a full calibration at this point, but what I'm seeing is that my images are already pretty well focused. It also worked fairly well in AF servo already. I was tracking some action ping pong and guys throwing darts, and anyway, compared to what a lot of 85mm lenses are, and particularly if you've been shooting the 1.2L Mark II, you'll feel like you're flying using the AF on this, which maybe isn't at the very top, the instantaneous of, say, the 24 to 70L Mark II, or a lens like that, but it's very, very close, very fast, and certainly another quality lens in terms of the build and the design from Canon here, and a worthy fit as far as what I've seen so far for their premium L series. So as you can see, this lens shows a lot of promise in terms of the build quality, and it's kind of positioned at being a moderately sized lens that isn't going to, break your back. Unfortunately, probably due to some pressure from these third parties, it comes in at a price that's lower than what most people anticipated it being, at about $15.99. And so while it's an expensive lens, it's not as kind of eye-wateringly expensive as what some other newer Canon lenses have been priced at. And so, early signs with it are very promising in terms of the autofocus performance, and I like what I'm seeing optically, but I'm going to break that down a little bit further because it's good optically, it's not perfect. And so I'm going to give you more detail about that in our next episode, and so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, if you look in the description, I've got an ongoing image gallery where I am shooting it both on full frame. I'll also shooting it some on APS-C, both on Canon APS-C and then as well as a Sony a6500 via adapter, which, by the way, it actually focuses really well via the Sigma MC11 adapter, which I'm happy to see there. And so some encouraging things. If you haven't already, you can follow me there also on social media. You can put in a pre-order. There's some links down below. And of course, if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.